Welcome to Dynamics Corner. This is Kris.
And this is Brad. This episode was recorded on January 30th, 2023. Kris. Excited to be back with another episode of In the Dynamics Corner chair. In this episode, we had the opportunity to sit down and speak with two Microsoft Dynamics 365 Business Central community members. We were able to sit down with MVP Shannon Mullins and legend Steve Chinsky to talk with them about migrating from Great Plains GP, or whatever the hell you want to call it today, over to Business Central.
All right, let's get to it.
There we go. Okay, ready?
Yep.
Is everyone good? All right, good. I love it. Steve, Shannon, thank you for taking the time to speak with us again. I've been looking forward to speak with both of you for quite some time. Shannon, still waiting for my mug.
It's coming, I promise. I actually got two mugs in the mail, one for you and one for Kris, with an official I love BC pin as well, so you can work that on your podcast and tell everybody where to go find
I cannot wait to receive that. I will wear that pin on the hat or on my shirt.
Awesome.
Until I lose it. But no, I'm looking forward. I like those pins. I've been looking forward to it. Mr. Steve, how are you doing?
Doing well, sir. Doing well. 2023 kicking off with a bang. Loving it. Going to visit a prospect tomorrow with my friend Shannon here. So we're really excited, and I think it's great. It's a little chilly, but I think coming from the Northeast, cold is a second not a second language, but almost in my blood. So it really doesn't matter. This is actually a warm, 50 degrees is kind of warm.
That is warm.
Shorts and a t-shirt.
That's warm.
It is warm. That is a heat wave, but it's wintertime. People forget that, things get cold during the winter over here. But a lot of big news for you guys, a lot of things going on for you both in 2023. If there's anything you want to share or talk about, I'll be the first to congratulate you on all of that, as well as you, Mr. Steve, making a nice big jump over to work with Shannon. I was excited and happy to hear about that. So congratulations. I know I've texted you and talked with you, but I wanted to, on this podcast, congratulate you both. I know you guys will do a lot of great things together. And for everybody else in the Business Central community. Which brings us to today. I had some questions. I know that you both work on implementing Business Central with a lot of different types of customers. And there's been a lot of talk, in the community, from the ERP software community. One of the big topics, some people call it a hot topic, some people won't, is the term GP, or Great Plains, or like anything else, whatever name you would like to have it. So if you could tell me, where you think GP is going and what you think that companies should think about with as far as the Great Plains or GP product, from your point of view, from your perspective, with what you know.
Steve, I'll let you start off.
I'm going to say, from what I know about GP and where it's headed and going, I think Microsoft at the Summit conference that it had in the fall, from all the sessions they had, I think GP is going to be, tapered off or basically finished in the near future. I don't know when that date might be, but in terms of getting new functionality and features, I think there will not be any more formal functionalities and features. Bug fixes, I can understand. I can understand fixes like that, or hot fixes. I can understand that until it's finally until there's no more versions to update. But I think it's going to support the basic GP versions that they want to keep available over the next several years. I'm going to guess, if I had to take a guess, I'm going to say somewhere between 2028 and 2030. I'm sure they're going to keep some versions running, but every year, just like BC and Nav, we of course sunset another version. Time goes by and you sunset another release. So I can see that happening over the many years. But again, just hot fixes and bug fixes. I can see no new functionality or features. I could see Microsoft also talking to their customers through conferences, through their partners, and explaining to them, hopefully through either announcements or emails that, BC is the way to go for moving from on-prem to a SaaS model of BC, because that's the product where you should be stepping into. I also see the fact that they're basically integrating more and more of their Office products into BC, and they're not really doing it wholeheartedly in the GP space. So there's a huge push there, as you can see through the presentations, through the releases that have been coming out with BC, how Teams is involved, Outlook's involved, and other, the Power BI and more. So, I mean, for me, last in 2022, coming out of the, like I said, the Summit conference, I really see GP kind of sunsetting over the next, say, I'm hoping 5 more years, but let's just say 5 to 10 more years, because I know Microsoft doesn't have anything set in stone yet, but per the management team that made the announcement, they are gonna no more functionality, no more new features. Hot fixes and bug fixes are understandable. That's pretty much it. So I foresee, especially like the upcoming conferences in 2023, the new one, Directions North America, Summit, Summit obviously in the fall. I see more and more sessions about people converting from GP to BC, a lot more sessions like that, a lot more, hopefully, Microsoft speaking about people moving in the near, over the next several years. So that's what I see right now. I mean, I see a lot of people getting on the phone and conversing over the forums. A lot of people asking what's going on, and pretty much that's the most information I answer when I see those forum questions. I do tell them what happened, and then I tell them to go if they want to. There are other people out there who spoke about this in the forums about what happened, but that's from my perspective.
No, I see a lot on that. And from your opinion or your perspective, you think that the users of GP, they may have 5 to 10 years. There's a horizon for the use of the application, or for maintenance, hot fixes of the application. So it may be a good time for them to start considering, searching for another application. And as you had started talking about, every time I start to hear about all of the integration within the, the M365 stack with Business Central, I get excited with Power Platform, Power BI, the Teams integration. They just seem to be putting it all together. What are some of the things that someone should consider when moving possibly to Business Central? And also, I'd love to load up the questions for both of you to see which ones you guys can remember and get back to us.
So I'm gonna piggyback off what Steve said, because my background GP.
Okay,
I've been doing GP since 1998. Back when it was Great Plains, Microsoft had not bought it, and have been with the software since, and still support several customers on it. And in fact, the customer going to tomorrow is a demo to move from GP to BC, and we've been doing several of these this year. So. Number one, Microsoft, they did announce at Summit, there will be no new features. For the GP users, they don't feel like that's a huge loss. However, when you look at the Microsoft space and what Microsoft's doing with Power Automate, with Teams, with all the capabilities of Outlook, all the capabilities of the mobile app, none of that investment is going into Great Plains. So from an IT director perspective, from the CIO perspective, from the CFO perspective, you are continually paying an annual investment into servers, into software, in which you will be getting no additional benefits other than what you're stuck with right now. And that's a huge loss in the modern day of life cycle of software. Your competitors, your future state of software is light years ahead of where you are back from 1998, right? We're in a whole different ballgame. So I do see a lot of customers looking and saying, hey, we need to get a plan in place. In fact, people ask me, should I have a plan in place? And I tell them, yes, you should start planning for this. But I am writing the book right now, From GP to BC, and hoping to have that done around March or April. And
an actual book.
Yes, a handbook.
Oh, that's exciting. I've always wanted to do that. I have to talk with you about that experience.
Yeah, I would love for you guys
now
to review it.
You just,
absolutely.
You just opened up a whole can of questions.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, because a lot of partners are out there saying, okay, this is an upgrade, this is a conversion. I don't think moving to BC is either. It is a totally different platform. Coming as a former GP user, as a former GP implementer, it's a completely different software. It's going from like night or day. Doesn't make BC a bad product. However, the capabilities of both products totally different. How both products function totally different. So it is wise for a customer to go through and evaluate and say, okay, what are we doing in GP? What are our business processes? And can BC number one meet it with core functionality? Can it meet it with apps? I have not ran into a customer on GP that can't move to BC. And I've been doing this a long time. But there's still things that
you've been working with this since 1998, so you have, deep knowledge of the GP product over the years and its evolution and the functionality. So if you have not come across a customer that can't, I use the word migrate. I understand what you were just talking about with the upgrade. I guess we'll have to
I call it an implementation. It is an implementation.
An implementation.
It would be just like you were going to one of our competitors. One is like the N word. I can never say it because that's like cussing. But if you're going to a competitor, you're not just going to take a button and press it and move over. That's the same.
If you would have said the N word, we would have bleeped you. Any other word, and even there's a few other products. If you would have said those words, we would have bleeped you as well.
I appreciate that transparency. But I think that's how people need to approach it. It is a new system. It's a new software, and also consider you've been doing these processes. Some of my clients that I've moved for 10, 12, 15 years and never reevaluated their processes. Well, this is a great time to do that. Because with Power Automate, with Power BI, with all the tools they give you in the Microsoft stack within BC, there's so much automation possible. Like, why are we doing what we did 12 years ago? Let's reinvent the wheel and make it better.
Yeah, I do want to point out that you mentioned one of the key points you mentioned is tech debt, technology debt, right? Like we're not upgrading, but when you're implementing to GP, it not only you get rid of those technical debt, and number two, it allows you to rediscover your business versus 12 years ago, right? So allowing you to review your processes and can you do this better? Can you automate this? I think it comes to that efficiency component that, I'm with you too. I've done demos of customers from GP to Business Central and showing them of, being able to paint that picture of what their life could look like with Business Central. They're like, what am I missing? They didn't tell me about this. It's like, I didn't know anything about Business Central. They told me to go to 2023 Cloud of GP. And I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I can tell you what VC Cloud looks like. But it's fun. It's a fun conversation.
Yeah.
So one of the things that, to go with one of the questions I had, is what should somebody consider? You'll say that something that somebody should consider when they go through to Great Plains, one would be to acknowledge that it would be, a new implementation. You're not going to move over, but in the new implementation, you can reevaluate or ask the why to your business processes to see, why am I doing these? Because something that we've been doing for 12 years may be a limitation of the application or of our business at that point of time that we just have adopted. But with the integration or the seamless, I don't even want to use the word integration any longer, but with the vast space of Business Central using all of these tools that are almost seamless or inherent within the application, such as Power BI, Power Automate, that they could, work with the partners such as yourself to, learn how to use the application, help them reanalyze their business processes, and then also be able to, look at how Great Plains works and match it up with Business Central. What else do you think is something that a user of GP should consider when moving over to Business Central?
Yeah, I think one other thing I'll let Steve add some points too, but I think one of the major ones is that, with GP, you're paying once a year. You're paying an annual renewal, right? And a lot of people get sticker shock over the SaaS-based model. But what they don't consider is all the, what I'll call external factors to the SaaS-based model. So yes, you're replacing one annual renewal with much discounted licensing. If you move from GP to BC, there's a 3-year cloud promo. Licensing is super cheap for 3 years, which is awesome. But included in that, no servers, no IT personnel to back up, restore, do all the cloud stuff that has to be done for on-prem clients, no RDPs, no VPNs, all of that goes away. And then on top of that, Microsoft's going to upgrade you twice a year with consistent patches for free, and the additional sandboxes, the additional environments. I mean, the cost savings of that alone over years winds up in the tens of thousands for every customer, because you've got the IT staff, you've got all the hardware, all the software, and your annual renewal. And really a TOC, like a total cost of ownership assessment, should be done to show people like, hey, here's what you're paying now, and that's the bottom dollar you see, but here's all the hidden costs that come with what you're doing. And a lot of CFOs and CIOs, they just don't know that, right? They don't know how many hours are spent maintaining the server, what the cost of the servers are, until they have to go buy a new one. And then it's like, oh, $10,000 for a server, or, sometimes $1,000, $2,000 a month for Azure. Companies should really start looking at that, right? Because I've noticed a lot of people are like, oh, well, Microsoft's going to put me on SaaS. I have to pay this for a lifetime, but that lifetime includes a lifetime of benefits, I think, was huge.
Yeah, I mean, a big thing there when you think about it, from a CIO's perspective, especially the CFO, I'll take the CFO's perspective. The amount of money, both from the payroll side, don't forget that you have to have people, 1, 2, whatever it is, to keep that server room running, or whether you're outsourcing your server farm, so somebody's hosting it for you, there's a cost to that. There's the cost of keeping that software up to date, right? There's a cost to replace the fixed asset if you're buying those assets, okay, which are going to, depreciate over time, but then you're gonna have to replace them because they're outdated with technology. You've got the cost to basically the technology, for instance, say AI. AI is becoming a hot topic now. And you think about the AI, being up to date with AI, being up to date with all the latest power applications that are out there, all the resources that are out there. That SaaS model it's got a cost. There's no doubt about it. But when you do the total cost of ownership analysis that Shannon just mentioned, you need to compare all the money you just spent, the payroll, the benefits, the fixed asset depreciation, all the things that it takes you to run that room, that's, your ERP system, that server, IT department, and then look at it from, here's how much it's going to cost me, my subscription base per year over, say, 3 to 5 years, and what you're getting. Because Shannon said, every month there's a hot fix that comes out every month, no matter what. Then twice a year, you get a new release. It's a full-featured, functional release. We're not talking like, oh, let me put a little bell and a whistle here. We're talking like potentially 15 to 30 new pieces of functionality that software is going to come out with, both from individual functionality like general ledger or supply chain, manufacturing, service and jobs, or it might be more backbone related. It could be something about the development, the code, integration to more Office, integration to other areas of technology, for banking, you've got, foreign currency, all different things it's integrating with out of the box now, no questions asked, and it just works. Email, how about auto emailing and things like that, it's, people need to do that analysis to understand why moving to the BC SaaS model is over time going to be a true investment, but it's going to be a positive investment. You're not going to be wasting your money. You're not going to be wasting your time, because there's so much coming out each and every 6 months, as well as the ability to, if you think about all of us, we've been in this space for so many decades now. And what's the one thing we always used to say when everybody walked in, we were talking nav, and you got a customer, what's the one thing you always say? Shoot, how many freaking stupid customizations am I going to be doing for nav just to make it freaking work?
The upgrade
path.
The
upgrade path is like, it's turnkey now. It's literally opening a door in a car, pressing a button, the engine runs, goodbye. And here we've got,
that's not turning a key,
right,
Steve. That's pressing a button.
You've got 4,000 apps in App Source now. I think close to 4,000.
It's 5,000 now. I think it's getting closer. Yeah, 6,000. That's huge.
So think about it. Name something a customer needs in whatever industry space. Maybe it's a certain field or whatever they're doing that you cannot find in App Source today. Now, yes, there's going to be those rare anomalies, but guess what? That's what going to your partner like an Accelerynt is all about. That's where we advise you, we give you we look at the business processes, and then we say, okay, maybe this one might need a small customization. But, when you think of the bigger picture, like, whether you're doing warehousing, whether you're doing manufacturing, big things,
Mm-hmm.
there's an app for that. And that's, to me, the luxury of not having to make a one-time big investment like it was in the past. Here you get a software that's got feature rich, a few apps, and you're off and running, at a good cost.
That's a big hurdle, just from the nav perspective, right? Because I come from nav, and similar approach with GP, where like it's always been like PTSD for a lot of nav customers. Like, oh, I gotta upgrade. That's expensive. It's a lot of time, right? And it's like, no, you just do it like one more time, just one more time. Go through the upgrade, and after that, don't have to worry about it. You're good, forever. So, yeah.
Yeah, that was tough. So another benefit then, so we talked about, the ability to review your processes to make sure you optimize. The other one is to reduce potentially your total cost of ownership, as well as have the continuously current application that you can utilize, so you don't have to go through that upgrade process, because even if there's hotfix with the applications, sometimes depending on your customizations, I believe so, Shannon, correct me if you're wrong, because you have a lot more experience in GP than I have, because I have zero. As far as using it, it's just much easier as well. So considering moving from Great Plains to Business Central online, you get the benefit of the cost reduction, and it's easily scalable, right? Is that the right way to say that? You can scale the application easy as your business grows. It's dynamic and changing. You have an application, and there's a lot of content being put into the application if you can do some development. As far as the features are concerned, I know sometimes individuals, organizations, when they're looking to move to a product to talk about a re-implementation, they want to talk about some of their existing processes as far as Great Plains and Business Central. Shannon, you mentioned there are some differences. Is there anything, we'll go both ways here, that you think that GP does better than Business Central that you would like to see in Business Central? And is there anything that you think Business Central does far better than GP that a customer can capitalize on by them implementing it with you?
Yeah, I think there's still some GP features and Microsoft's. I'm on the committee of GP to BC with Microsoft as an MVP, giving them feedback and things that need to be moved over. I mean, there's a couple of things, the functionality that GP can do. So one is like on purchase orders and sales orders, you can have multiple ship to addresses on one sales order or purchase order. So you could split your shipments. If you had a sales order and it had 6 different ship to locations, you don't need 6 sales orders. You just need one. And you can ship and post and pack those one by one. And also GP has the concept of back orders, which BC still is lacking. So the fact that you can put things in a back order bucket, obviously you could do the calculation in BC, but GP truly had a back order. So you could actually transfer a document to a back order document and then fulfill a back order document. That way, everything's kind of in buckets, and that's still missing. There's still some bank rec features that are missing. There's still some, basic check formats that are missing. So there's a few things that I've seen are missing, but I know Microsoft is deeply listening to the people who are working on this and saying, hey, let's try to get this into the product. I will say that, there's a ton of stuff that BC does better. I mean, just the search functionality alone in BC is a win. So in GP, to search for a record, to filter records, to find records, such a nightmare. I mean, that's a nice way to put it. So the flow through capabilities that BC has, but the stuff that really kind of I think that makes BC stand out is going to be that the integration with Teams, with Outlook, with configuration templates, integration manager with GP, awful. It's been around since the 90s. It's absolutely terrible. So you show these clients that, hey, you can use edited in Excel, or you can use a config pack and you can just take an Excel spreadsheet and zip it in and be done. They're like, what? Or being able to renumber your chart of accounts without it being a major overhaul. I can't tell you how many tens of thousands of dollars clients have paid me over the years to do a chart of accounts renumbering. And in GP, I hate the number. I just change it in a few seconds and I'm ready to go. So there's a lot of huge wins. And really, I think it's up to like having a value-added partner to help sit down with you and say, you're not going to know what the differences are as a new client because you don't even know the new system. So you really got to have someone who understands both systems, who can sit down with you and say, yeah, well, you did it like this way in GP, but that's out of the box in BC. Or you did this customization in GP, well, that's an app. That's something that we can control. We have an app for that. We don't have to do any kind of extension, or maybe we do need to do an extension for BC. So
that is a very good approach, because if you work with someone who understands both of the applications when you're considering what to do, as far as your go forward plan with GP, is someone who can speak the language. It's just like working in a particular industry. If somebody understands your needs and your requirements, or the terminology that you use, it does make an implementation go a little bit easier, I have found. So I think that's good, having someone with the experience of that. In the experience that you have with moving someone from Great Plains or GP to, why does all these names change all the time? The other one we'll always get into is FNSCM, FNO, F, like, Business Central, Dynamics Nav, Navision, Microsoft Business Solutions for a blip of a minute. I don't understand why the names change all the time. But what do you think that they can, what would a customer expect to go through as far as an implementation process with them? Is there a standard way that you can move from GP to Business Central without, analyzing or looking at, depending on modifications? Like, how much time generally is involved? I know it's tough to say, a blanket statement, but, every implementation is different. Is there a generalization of what somebody could expect, or the process they could expect to go through in a time period of time?
I think this is really where, what I've been doing with a lot of customers, and what we're doing with this customer now, is we're doing a why not BC evaluation, which is a much smaller project than an implementation. And what we're doing is we're going through, looking at the current processes, looking at the current requirements, to then prep a demo for them that makes sense. It's not just, hey, here's BC, but here's BC and here's what you do now, but here's what it's going to look like in the future state. Obviously barring any integrations or customizations. And then 2, coming back and giving them a true estimate of what it's going to take. I mean, I know there's partners out there that are going out and saying, oh, it's going to be $20,000 flat to move you from one to the other. And then they get into the weeds and realize, oh shoot, they're using like inventory, they're using manufacturing, they've got integrations, they've got customizations, and now we're way out of scope, and this thing's going to cost, maybe 10 times what they estimated. So I think, like I said, there's no way to really know without getting into the weeds, honestly. I think it's a very bad practice of partners to just say, hey, it's going to be $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. It can come back to bite you and the client, right? Because the client's going to have expectations that what I do today, you're going to carry over to my new system, and you don't know those expectations. You're both going in with a lot of risk, assuming that things are going to happen. And so I always recommend to GP customers, especially, or people coming from Nav, we're moving a customer from AX to BC. And before we even did that, we did an evaluation of, hey, we don't know if we can do it. We need to make sure there's not so many customizations in AX that it would be more costly for you not to move to FNO. But at the end of the day, they never even needed AX. They probably never should have even been on that system, which we discovered during requirements. So that's where requirements, I think, really, it's helpful to do that discovery beforehand.
So I like that approach. And I think the big point that you made as far as what a customer or prospect or somebody looking to go to GP should expect is not it's a $10,000 implementation, boom, done. It's, let's take a look at what you really have, make sure it's the right product, right? Working with someone who understands the application well, and then being able to properly assess, to have a realistic expectation of what it takes to move from GP to Business Central.
Yeah, it's pretty much, adding to what Shannon just said, for me, it's all about the discovery of a customer, wherever they're coming from, FNO, AX, GP, how about SL? Coming from, Solomon days. Let's break that out.
Wow, you're bringing back an oldie. There we go.
But it's still there. Don't forget, it's still, it's still running. But people can move from one software to the next, but it's all about sitting down and understanding, what are they really doing? Why did you spend all that money to do XYZ? Why did you implement that process to do XYZ or ABC? And really analyzing that. And that's kind of where we sit with them, we discover, we kind of evaluate how you're trying to define everything, so that when you finally come back to them in a BC I don't want to call it lingo, but almost BC processes, you know exactly what's out of the box, meaning standard BC. You know what's going to be an app, maybe you know what might be an extension or might be a tweak here and there. You know, also, a big push lately, a big one is, the power apps. It's been a very big thing with workflow. I want to automate this. I want to automate that. I mean, I got to move here. Everybody wants a workflow in one way, shape, or fashion. And that's where the power comes into play. One thing to mention, and I know you asked that question of Shannon, was, I believe they called it Management Reporter. I think that was the reporting tool of choice, I guess, in GP, whereas Nav was Nav. You either, it was in the system, or guess what? You coded it yourself as a developer, you made a report, or you went out to Jet, or something like that. But, now with BC, you've got, you have a few tools to pick from. You have your base BC reporting now that is very abundant. I think it's really robust in and of itself. I think you then move to Excel, and you just do Excel-based reporting, like the Cosmos of the world. And yes, there's Jet out there. And then you got Power BI, which really takes everything and moves it into more that, again, it's fully integrated. It's connected to BC. So when you expose, BC, through an API, and guess what? You can do Power BI reporting with dashboards, which is what everybody keeps asking for. When you think about the larger the company, the management says, "Where's my dashboard? I want to wake up in the morning, a cup of coffee. Where's my dashboard?" So,
2023, the year of dashboards, I'm noticing, and Power Apps. Why? Because we just need a workflow.
I mean, that's what it is. I mean, for me, it's sitting to get to know somebody and putting those processes down, and then saying, okay, yeah, now we can come back and present to you what, realistically the implementation is going to look like. I mean, I've seen some really horrific ones in my past life, going from GP to BC in the last 6 years. And, oh yeah, use the out of the box tool, that works. I'm like, it was a complete disaster. Then we had to write it in SQL to make it better and fix it. And, it's just, some things just don't work the way as expected. And when you don't get to know the person first, it as Shannon mentioned, it's not going to be to anybody's benefit.
You touched upon a point, and one of the things I would like to speak with both of you about, just because I try to stay up with all this. As of this recording, Microsoft released the plan for 2023 Wave 1. So I do have a few points I want to talk with both of you on that. But Steve, you mentioned you had some issues in the past with you used the word out of the box, or with the standard GP to Business Central integration. Last year, Microsoft had made some updates to that integration within Business Central. Either one of you, both of you, what has your experience been with that tool? Has that been sufficient for a portion of your moves or the implementations from GP? Or do you still, find that something such as configuration packages or other tools seem to work better?
So I have and will not use Microsoft migration tools. Ever.
Okay.
Will not. And also it will be in my book not to use them.
I will second that wholeheartedly. After I had a GP to BC one, and it was so horrific last year, and we use SQL to actually just take the data out and put them into config packages, and the config packages then went into BC, because it was much easier to take the data out, put it in the right context of BC, and then have them edit the data in a BC config package, and then put the data.
Okay.
I won't go there either.
No, it's a good point, because it's important. Again, it goes back with the experience. There's a lot of publications that say, oh, just do this. Oh, you just have to use this tool. And I think in some cases it gives the wrong mindset, where it's, oh, your implementation would just cost $10,000. Oh, there's a tool for this that you can quickly just click a button. It may work in some cases. I'm not going to say it would never work, but there may, it's not something that every implementation you're going to be able to have all these tools that you can just, click a button, like Steve said, when you're getting in the car. and have it run,
Turnkey.
and
Yeah,
you're
this
done.
is
You may, you know,
this is the biggest
go
issue
ahead.
is that, like I said, most of these people have been on GP since 1990. Do you want all your customers since 1990, all your items, all your chart of accounts to be mapped over? The answer almost is
No.
No,
99%
clean it
no.
up.
Why would
Why?
you do that? Why would you take junk and put it
I
into a new system?
Yep.
Because you know what's going to happen. Your AP clerk, your AR clerk are going to go, this is the same stupid data I've been looking up for 12 years that drives me crazy. And this is the perfect time to clean it up.
Yep.
We give them that opportunity. I mean, it's very easy for us to extract the data out of GP via SQL. So we just dump it. Hey guys, listen, this is a very good time for you to clean this up. Get rid of everybody who's junk. And then we'll take the history of GP and we'll put it into temp tables, what I would call a temp table inside BC, where they can look up the history and they can have all that if they want to go back and reference old customers. But
Thank you.
Dump
I've been preaching this
customers.
for ages. Like, many, many years I've been doing that. People spend so much time on data conversions trying to
Historical.
move a pile of junk over, and if you just move a pile, I can't swear because Kris says it changes the rating and nobody can listen to it. So, you take a pile of junk from one place and put it to another, it's still junk. Whereas, as you had mentioned, there's ways you can bring the data in to Business Central that it's in a table that you can access it. You can look at the old system, or you can work with some of the other tools and put it into a data warehouse, and now you can report on Business Central and have access to your old system without having to go through the whole process of, we can't really clean this up because we have 10 years worth of history that we want to put in. Why? To look at it once, whereas you can do it. So that's another consideration, I guess we could say, when you're going through this re-implementation, is to, look at your processes, look at the cost of ownership. I mean, there's a lot of things that we're talking about here with the benefits, but it's, take a good analysis of what data do you really need to bring over and what can you add over time. If you have a vendor that you haven't used at a certain amount of time, if you need to use them in the future because you say your cutoffs, whatever, add them. And it could be a good training experience too, for somebody.
Just to reiterate, that discovery component is so important. Especially when even from a nav customer perspective, to some it's technically the same. Well, I still think that they need to go through the discovery period so that you can look at new process of things that you've been doing for the last 10 years. You can do it in a better way, or maybe automate that tedious work that you've been doing for the last 10 years. Discovery is a must-have. I always believe in that. Even if I know your system, your business, but I don't know, Susie's AP process that she's running on an Excel. I don't see that, right? But that discovery is a big deal.
Well, and also it's a good activity to walk them through posting groups, through dimensions, through very new concepts. Posting groups. I'm teaching 3 GP all-stars who've been doing GP forever as well. I'm teaching them BC as part of my MVP mentoring. And last week we got stuck on the topic of posting groups, right? And the one girl was just struggling, like, hey, I just don't get it. And I'm like, okay, let's talk about it in terms of balance sheet, income statement, and then it's going to make a lot more sense. And when I could reiterate, hey, this is where it's tying back, this is where it's getting those accounts, and I'm like, oh, okay. But that concept, we could probably spend a good 8 hours per implementation just explaining posting groups. It's a very foreign concept. Did not happen in GP. GP every single time would ask you, what GL account do you want to use? You could control it. That goes away in BC. So the fact that they have to identify these and know what they are, it's huge. And when we're doing those config packs, right, we're like, hey, what are going to be the posting groups? So it's a good time to go through and define those dimensions. So it's a good training exercise as well.
Yeah, training is key.
I do think that's on the list for 2023 Wave 1. I believe. I don't have the list up in front of me, but I stick my face in all this stuff. I think that your ability to change accounts on posting, I have to look. I read it somewhere on a timeline. I have to take a look at that. But that's, I think it goes to your point that there's a lot of things that are being made, or a lot of enhancements being made to Business Central to make it fit or be similar to other applications.
I do have a question really quick though. Shannon, this is for you, and Steve, if you have the answer too, that's awesome. So let's say, for example, you took a customer, GP customer into Business Central, you gone live, what's the typical length of time do they actually like, hey, they no longer need that post go live support? Like, hey, I can, I got this.
I typically will say it depends on if they're manufacturing distribution or not, because those are the type of projects we do. But if they're basic core financial, I would say 2 month-end closes is usually what I tell everyone. You're going to go through your first one. You're going to learn everything you need to do for month-end close. You're going to get all your reporting, and then you're going to forget about it until the second month. And then the second you do that one, then it becomes like your everyday stuff. You're going to learn a lot quicker, right? Because you're doing it repetitively. But you've got all those month-end things that you're just not going to remember. And then year end, I just tell people, call me when you're ready to do year end, because you're just not going to remember that at all.
The reports you got to
don't even worry about it until the time comes.
And there's stuff every once in a while people run into. But I will say, I think that VC is pretty intuitive. And I think the fact that Microsoft has documented so much through Microsoft Learn, through the online documentation. I mean, we didn't have that in GP. When I first started implementing GP, they sent us books. We had 200, 300 page books for every module. And if you wanted to find something, you had to go get the book, right? And now it's like, hey, what is this? You can just hover on it, look at what is this, click on it, go back to the documentation. And I mean, how much time savings is that for even the customer going, I don't want to call my partner. I can try to figure this out on my own. So I think that it's much more intuitive.
That's just like the Vision Financials book on that binder.
That they used to have to purchase. They used to sell those books separately, and those books were like gold. Like if you had a set, I remember I ended up having a set given to me, and that was like gold.
It was in the cabinet,
borrowed
in the CFO office.
At that time, I had a cube, and if somebody wanted to look at or borrow the book, I wouldn't even let them leave.
Yeah.
So you can look at it right here on the desk because it was like gold.
Yeah, and I mean, I think also I don't know if anyone's looked at it, but Microsoft Learn, they've embedded a ton of videos on there too now.
Yes.
Entering an AP document, there's a video for it. It's not just hey, here's a step-by-step guide. I'm like, that's huge, we used to have to record those for GP every single time. And now I'm like, here's the link to the video, and they can just go look at it. So that's super, super helpful. I think
and along with the Business Central application, that now is opened up as well with the docs online, where members of the community can contribute content, to the application itself, as well as to the documentation online. So it's becoming an even more fully formed, like you said, learning or documentation path, because members of the community are filling it out and doing a lot of the content. Much more than a couple people that work within the application can, and they can put it in the context of a user versus, somebody who's created it, I guess you could say. Are there any other key points that you would like to emphasize as far as what somebody should consider, some of the benefits, or any comments on moving from GP to Business Central, something that may stand out in your mind that we haven't had the opportunity to discuss in this time? I could talk to you guys about this for days.
I think the biggest thing, and again, I'm going to be a little biased, but that's because I used GP back in my accounting days when I had to buy it for the company that I was a controller for. So I did buy GP. At the time, we were a manufacturer. So I can definitely tell you that, again, me being a little biased, the manufacturing and supply chain functionality and features to me were just night and day. I mean, again, granted, it's ages ago I'm talking about when I bought GP, decades ago. But the point here for me is, and I know GP, I've always felt GP was this American-based financial ERP system that was phenomenal when it came to the accounting side of things, different things about accountants needed XYZ. So now coming from out of accounting and doing now the NAV, the BC, there's a ton of features that across the board, I'm talking from soup to nuts. If I'm an auditor, having an auditor log in and just giving them the audit access that they're doing, you have your external accountants, or maybe it's something about, the banking side of things, or the foreign currency, or multinational, multi-company now. You talk about the new release coming out in the Wave 1 coming out in 2023. Now I can do multi-company, keeping all the master records in sync now in the software. Yes. It's like I literally went and I bowed.
You're going into the other conversation I wanted to have,
bowing
because
when an announcement came out. I mean,
I can't even sit still now. I'm getting so excited.
I was literally, I was foaming at the lip. I'm like, well, I was like, oh my God, I'm like a dog here,
I'm glad I wasn't the only one.
Yeah, you guys are not the only one.
Talk to Kris.
I've modified that thing several times. I've had customers want the same thing. It would modify it, and then now it's like out of the box. Amazing.
Yeah, it's like between, there's just so many like nuances. There's free things. I mean, I'll even be the first to admit there's free toys, there's free apps you can use in BC that we've all gotten used to over probably the last 5 years now. There's just so many more features that are available to me to operationally run my business, both financially and operationally, that are out of the box, no question asked, easy to use, easy to teach somebody, cross-train people from one area to another, much more easier that way. The videos are out there, like Shannon says. It's just simple. I mean, I also believe that when you think about making this move and you think about, how is it going to impact my team? When you think about like the change that I might hit, the big change that's about to hit me with, I think it's easier because, you're going from Microsoft to Microsoft. So at least that should be a win right there in and of itself. The second piece is BC kind of in a way looks and feels like, as we know, Office. There are things that kind of look the same. The action, we think of when we open up Outlook, we've got our little top bar at the very top here. Even though in BC we call it the action bar area, so I mean, everything kind of has a look and a feel that's just placed so well within everything we do personally, because we use Word, we use Excel personally, and Outlook and things. So it just lends itself to a smooth transition. So for me, it's a win-win all around. I mean, I don't know why anybody would say otherwise, unless you are so embedded in something on-prem that is just, and you haven't had the opportunity to look into it, but you should, because there's just so much out there now, and it's only going to get better.
Shannon, is there anything that comes to mind for you as far as something that stands out as a big, benefit that we haven't spoke about moving from Great Plains to Business Central?
I think, two thoughts. Number one, if you don't have a plan now, you should probably start thinking about a plan, especially if you're listening to this. I tell folks, like, it's not an immediate fire drill, but it should be on your budgeted software list of things that you're looking at in the next few years. That would be my first thought on it. And second, I just can't tell you how happy the clients are at the other side. Implementation is not fun. Just be forewarned. I tell everyone it's like pulling toes. None of us like it. We don't like it. You don't like it. But at the end, we're all happy, right? And we hopefully get to that happy result of we're on a new software and things are going well. And then a few months later, when I call a client like, hey, I haven't had a support case in a week. Is everything good? Oh yeah, it's great. We're good. We got this, and you're like, okay, all that pain, all that struggle of implementation, really there's huge benefits at the other side, because you are going to be much happier, once you get through that. So keep it in mind.
I have to chuckle at that. The implementation turmoil. Everybody thinks that everything's painless. Listen, there's different levels of pain, and people can talk.
I love implementations.
Pain, but
does that make me?
At the end, it's worthwhile. I know we've been on for quite a bit. Have you, either of you, looking? And I know I appreciate your time. I know you're both very busy, and your time is valuable. But have you had the opportunity to digest the 2023 Wave 1 list yet that's been published? I know that it's always up for change, but Steve started talking about one of the features that had me drooling.
Yeah, I think
I need a better life if I'm drooling over the synchronization of master data.
I think there's a couple out there. I reposted one yesterday, which is the ability to take a list and kind of do a pivot table or a pivoted kind of report, which I'm super excited to see and start messing around with that piece. I haven't seen it yet, but I'm super excited about that. And I think the other big one that's a huge win is the company copy, which had been available in GP forever, where you could take master records and flip them between companies for companies who are running tons of databases. That's a huge win.
Some of the things that sound so simple, but they're so powerful. The tool that you had mentioned, like the data analysis on screen, it goes back to the comment that we had about dashboards. It shows what Microsoft's doing with the application to make it more usable by the users, where they can use the application themselves and you don't need to rely on someone else to always make a customization or modification. You can personalize it yourself, and you can have different levels of use, because you may not need Power BI in your implementation. So therefore, this tool may be suitable for you, but another implementation, if you need a little more analysis, you may work with Power BI, or as you'd mentioned, Cosmos has a good reporting solution online. So you can have, work with, there's tools available for every level of business. So it's great that we have that within the application. The other
it
one
won't be long though, because right now they did the analysis where you can slice and dice. It won't be long when they're going to add chart part option that they can actually put charts on it. That'll be fun.
Well, you can, yes. The charting, you and I have been speaking about that. There's some things you can do.
Well,
with the charting
what would be cool is
level.
if you could take that analysis and just click on publish to Power BI and have it do all the work for you, and then you're done, right?
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Send this to Power BI and then send it back to me. And wouldn't that be nice? Hey, here's the data I want. Publish, make it a Power BI report. We're ready to go.
Boom.
Off and running.
You know what I'm waiting for, Chris. I want to hear what your favorite of the list is. You got everyone's. I mean, I like them all. I have a few that stand out. I'm waiting for the day. Ready? Business Central. What was my top sold product in the United States last quarter? And it's going to come up with a report, or present to me in a bar chart my top selling items, top 10 selling items by my top 10 customers for the last quarter. Like once we start getting to
you're talking about like built in though, right? Because like I know Power BI, you can do that, so you could technically do that. Yeah,
you could set that up. I'm talking build. I know you can do it with some of the other tools that are available, but I'm saying once in the application, just like you could do the tell me up at the top where it does like the fuzzy search, when you can do like the language processing of give me this data.
It won't be long.
It will be impressive.
Yeah, I mean.
What is your favorite thing for the 2023 Wave 1 list that came out last week as of this recording?
There's a lot, but I was actually pretty happy and surprised that you guys already talked about it. Is the company master item. I know those are master records. I'm pretty sure we can extend that. I'm sure they're going to add more. So, I'm trying to like not think about extending it myself. Maybe just kind of what will Microsoft add? Because then I don't want to double the effort. But I'm really excited about that because I've done it several times. It's like, finally. That's what I'm excited about.
I'm excited about them all. I have to close out with that page searching, or the searching.
Oh, that's true. That's another one. Master,
with the background task processing. I mean, you can do a lot, as Shannon had mentioned, with searching and finding data. Back in the old days of the Navigate, if you go back with us dinosaurs, it would only search for certain things in certain tables. Now the ability to search for anything anywhere, in essence,
table searching,
is pretty interesting to me. Well, Shannon, Steve, I could talk with both of you all day, all night about Great Plains, GP, moving to Business Central 2023, we're in everything else division. Shannon, I'm waiting patiently now to see this, the book that you have about GP to Business Central. I think it will be full
Can I get
of
a signed
valuable
copy?
information for people looking to move.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely. Yes.
Yes. Wait, no. See, you have to do two then. Right, you can't just give Chris one. You have to send me one too.
2 books. We're good.
I'm super excited.
That's how it works. No, I appreciate it. But I would, and maybe once the book is complete and you have it available, we could have you come on and talk a little bit more about the GP to Business Central migration, because this topic is pretty big at this point, and us having something else to reference as a tool for somebody to use to move to what I think would be important and valuable. And I thank you both again for your time. I know you're very busy and you're both doing great things. Congratulations, Steve, for working and teaming up with Shannon. I know you both would do some great things. But Mr. Steve, how can others get in touch with you to learn more about the great things that you're doing within Business Central and implementations?
You can always find me online, LinkedIn, as always, or on any of the forums. They can find me on all the Doug forum, the communities.microsoft.com forum, the DCI forum that's actually being re-energized starting to the 1st of February. They can always find me at Chinsky@Accelerynt.com. So they can find me there all the time. And literally, if you can find me online, which most people do anyway, you can get in touch with me. So, or better yet, contact the two of you and Kris, and then you'll forward them off to me anyway.
We could do that.
So that's always one way to do it. So.
Thank you.
If you haven't submitted anything for the upcoming 2023 conferences, then you might have missed all the deadlines, since most of our conferences will be set in stone in the very, very near future for some of the upcoming conferences throughout the year.
When is the deadline for Summit NA submissions?
The call for proposals will start on February 1st. You have until the end of March to get them back. Maybe a week after, maybe might be you give or take, but the paper, you'll see a big announcement coming out on 2/1 socially about it. So please submit stuff in there. We will start deciding the sessions in the month of April and hopefully publish the agenda within May. So very, very quickly turnaround on this whole thing this year, a little different than previous years. So it's going to be a quick turnaround. BC will have, 100+ sessions, like it's done in every year. As you always know, we're always the big boys. I call it the big boys and girls now. So you'll definitely see us have our fast chats, medic booth, and tons of sessions from our MVPs and experts in the community, as well as our users and members and people who use the software. So get it in there.
You got sessions? You got sessions, Steve? You gonna have sessions? You gonna submit some?
I'm gonna submit a few.
I got 10. I'm gonna submit. Hopefully, one of them is gonna make it. Okay, that's all.
Hey,
listen, you can't
do this. Okay, learning from experience. So Steve Chinsky somehow got me into. I don't even know how many sessions I had last year. 8. It was insane.
That's unmanageable, but that does leave me a question. Shannon, I do want to get back to how people can get in contact with you, and I have to say I'm envious of you doing this book again, because I even said to someone the other day, that's something I've always wanted to do, and for you to do that, I just have great congratulations for it. I'm serious. I would love to take a look at that book. But Steve, if somebody submits session submissions to Summit, let's just say I have a list that I would like to submit, thinking that maybe somebody would, there may be some way that a session wouldn't be accepted because of whatever reason. So if I have, Shannon mentioned she had 8 or Kris has 10, just because you submit, if they all get approved, can you say, well, I only want to do these 5? I submitted 10. You follow what I'm saying? Like, you submit a bunch with the expectation that maybe they all won't be accepted, but I only want to do, 3, 4, or 2, because like Shannon said, if you're doing 8, I mean, that's more than a full-time job, because there's a lot that goes into planning a session if you want it to be a quality session, which we want for the members of these conferences.
You can submit a session and not be the speaker. You can submit a session and be the speaker. Mm-hmm. So you can do both now. And you can say that in your when you're submitting it, there's things that says, I want to be the speaker, I don't want to be the speaker. Or you can say, I'm submitting this and I don't know who the heck can speak about this. And you're hoping that we, as part of the programming committee, will find a speaker for you because it's a hot session, we want to hear from it. You have options.
Okay.
I was going to say, Steve, can I submit sessions and then delegate Brad to be the speaker on all of them? That's awesome.
You can, because there's a section that says, there's a speaker section. You can type anybody's name in there. Doesn't have to be yours anymore.
Thank you, Shannon. I apprate that.
So give him a hard one.
Coming for you and Kris.
Give him a hard one. That's it.
That's it. Shannon, how can somebody get in contact with you to talk with you more about the great things you're doing over at Accelerynt, as well as, if they have any questions on moving from Great Plains to Business Central, or any product to Business Central, or even from nothing to Business Central?
Yeah, I would say 2 easiest ways to follow me and reach me. Probably the first being LinkedIn. I'm very, very active on LinkedIn. So you can find me Shannon Mullins, MACC. It was MVP and I got banned from LinkedIn for a week for that. So now it just says Shannon Mullins, MACC.
They banned you for putting MVP?
They banned me for putting MVP, and I had to plead to the LinkedIn people because it's not officially my title. I
It's not your name.
I gave up the fight. Anyway, Shannon Mullins, MACC.
Yeah, we'll have a separate conversation on that because I see so many people with that, so I don't even understand.
Anyway,
but that's a separate conversation.
Taken care of. I'm very active also on Twitter, as are a lot of the MVPs. So at one Shannon Mullin without an S1. So you can find me in both places. Best way to get a hold of me there and send me a message and we can chat. So yeah.
And we'll put the links to the contact information that both of you had referenced in the show notes. And we also do post, we do have a Dynamics Corner website, dynamicscorner.com, where we're listing all of the podcasts as well, so that there'll be links to your information where people can contact you. Thank you both again. I appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your evening. And I look to talk with you soon. And Shannon, I can't wait for my pin, my cup, and signed copy of the book.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Have a good evening. Ciao, ciao. Thank you, Kris, for your time for another episode of In the Dynamics Corner Chair. And thank you to our guests for participating.
Thank you, Brad, for your time. It is a wonderful episode of Dynamics Corner Chair. I would also like to thank our guests for joining us. Thank you for all of our listeners tuning in as well. You can find Brad at developerlife.com. That is DVLPRLIFE.com. And you can interact with them via Twitter, DVLPRLIFE. You can also find me at matalino.io, MATALINO.io. And my Twitter handle is Matalino16. And you can see those links down below in the show notes. Again, thank you, everyone. Thank you, and take care.